session we are looking at a very, very common problem for most people, which is pulling on the lead when your dog's out walking. It's a problem that most people experience at some time in their dog's life, and it can be a very difficult and frustrating problem to overcome, especially when you've got a big dog or you've got a dog that may be prone to some aggressive tendencies, either towards other dogs or towards strangers, or you just might be worried that that is a possibility in the future. A lot of people actually start to avoid walking their dog, and that can actually really compound the problem by decreasing the amount of social contact the dog has, and also owners start to become defensive, and they can start to cue their dog to react in a certain way by grabbing a lead, shortening a lead, and that type of behaviour. And I think a lot of people do that without knowing that they do, and that is a problem for a lot of people. I would much prefer that owners are trained to respond to their dog in a very neutral way, so that their demeanour stays really calm and consistent throughout the whole walk. And that means that the dog has a very relaxed outlook on what's happening in the whole social aspect of going for a walk and the street environment. Let's have a look at a particular client of mine that we went out to see. This is Bob and his wife Kathleen, and their German Shepherd Harley. Harley's a very big dog and has a very different view of Bob and Kathleen and who is ahead in the pack. We can see here that Harley is quite happy to head off down the street. So this clip shows us out on the street in front of their home. We could use the street because, as I said earlier, it's a cul-de-sac. And what I'm doing here is what I call random walking. So we've got Harley out there and I am walking completely randomly. He's got no idea where I'm going and there's no pattern to what I'm doing. And you can see every now and again he starts to pull ahead as I walk for too long in one direction. But every now and again he stops and he either hangs back on the lead because he's not sure where I'm going, like just there, or eventually he will actually stop. And the aim of this exercise is to make him think. What I want Harley to do is to look to me for where to go, not assume he knows where to go. In his mind at the moment, anyone on the end of his lead is following him. And that's quite typical of a dog that's displaying dominant behaviour. So I am wanting to change his thought process to looking to where I'm going. Whenever I'm standing still, I want the dog to sit and stay really calm.
Yeah, he's certainly a big, powerful dog, isn't he?
He's a very, very strong dog.
And he definitely wants to take you for a walk.
Absolutely. And to be honest, in the past, up until we visited, he's done a very good job of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So here I am handing the lead over, and I'm going to give them a few pointers about how to do it. It's an exercise that anyone can do at a local park or anywhere where you've got a wide open space. And I often recommend to people that when you do go to a park, if you're in the habit of going to a park and walking your dog, don't walk around the outside perimeter of the park, because the dog knows exactly where to go and you might as well be following the track.
Exactly.
I recommend keeping the dog on lead, taking him to a park, stand in the middle of it, and then start this. And little bit by little bit, as the dog gives in and hands over some leadership, you can actually walk for longer periods in one direction.
Yeah, I find a similar thing, and sometimes you find in a park you'll get rows of trees. I sometimes walk around the trees, and the dogs very quickly will get the idea of, oh, okay, so we go left, right. As soon as they get that idea around the trees, go right around another tree, and just sort of, makes it more fun for you and the dog. The dog doesn't quite know wherever you're going, or even walk around a tree. So they really do get the idea that it's easier for them to follow you than the other way around.
Absolutely, and it makes it more interesting. And an interesting point to make here is that a 10-minute walk doing this with Harley was enough to make him fall asleep.
Yeah.
As soon as he got home, he really relaxed, and he was very brain tired. He'd had some really good mental stimulation because he's having to think. And that's far more effective than taking your dog for an hour-long walk.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing you've got to watch with a dog this size especially is that what a lot of people don't realise is that as far as draft animals go, dogs are actually the strongest draft animal there are. So they can pull more on a weight basis for their own weight. So their power to weight ratio is actually stronger than a draft horse. So they're incredibly strong.
And especially a working breed like this, and he's certainly a good size example of his breed. And while he's a lovely, lovely dog, the behaviour that he'd shown prior to our visit is a definite indicator that he could become a problem dog as he gets older. So Bob and Kathleen were definitely doing the right thing in seeking some help and trying to work with, with their dog and change his behaviour for the better before it was too late.
Because if this dog thinks that he's in control, he's basically strong enough, unless you're quite a physically strong person, if this dog really wanted to go somewhere, you'd be hard pushed to actually stop him.
He has actually pulled Kathleen over in the past.
No, I'm not surprised. He's a big, powerful dog.
So Dad's going to have a go now. And I've asked them to walk him in a very structured way in terms of how they're holding their lead and how much free rein he's got, so that when he's walking nicely beside them, he's actually on a check chain here, and his chain is relatively loose. As soon as he decides to pull, it will go tight. But he needs a reward for doing the right thing, and that reward is a loose collar. The reason he's on a check chain is simply because he is so strong. It is the only means that they felt they had to control him. And while it's not equipment that I would generally use on a daily basis, their reasons for having it on him were quite sound.
One of the things you've got to watch with the check chains or choker chains is not to actually jerk your dog. If you pull really hard on them, snap that lead, it can actually do damage to the dog, especially smaller dogs.
That's right, and they can actually be responsible for damage to the dog's trachea, and cause breathing problems, especially in a dog this big that's constantly pulling.
He's starting to show a few signs of improvement there in that last week walk.
And we have to remember that this is the first lesson, and the owners are going to have to put in a bit of work with him and also maintain their consistency. So they can't just head off down the footpath after they've done this, because he'll revert straight back to pulling. You can see he's hanging back a bit from Dad now. He's starting to think, and he's also getting a little bit tired at this point. We've been going for some time now, probably about 15 minutes, and that's probably as much as this dog can handle in a first session.
And that's a very good point. We can't achieve everything in one day, so you've got to be aware that when your dog starts to show signs of stress or tiredness, it's actually time to have a rest for you and the dog, and the same for yourself. If you start getting stressed, you're better off, ending the session there.
Absolutely. And I'm just mixing it up a little bit by changing pace here. And Bob was quite happy to go for a little run with his dog, and it gives Harley a chance to just relax and move a little bit quicker as well. They're a working breed, and it's in their instincts to want to listen to somebody and move around a little bit faster, because that's their natural behaviour. So sometimes it's quite nice with shepherd type dogs to actually go a little bit quicker, go for a run, but at the same time maintaining that discipline of walking at heel and not pulling.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, now we're going to look at food bowl aggression. And food bowl aggression essentially is when your dog is aggressive towards you or other members of your family around the food bowl. And we're going to have a look at Khan and Nikki. Khan's a rehoused Malamute, and he's a great dog in most respects, but he thinks he's the alpha, and he knows he's the alpha, in fact. And Nikki has problems with feeding him.
So if we try to food down. Now try go up and remove the food.
He's putting the bowl down.
Got it, yeah, gonna go.
And you can hear he's been quite aggressive here and quite growly, and in that situation, it was quite important when we set that situation up that I had Khan on a lead, and in this situation with the training, it's quite important that the person on the lead is capable of actually holding that dog, and he's a powerful dog, a very powerful dog in fact. So it's quite important to have him on a good taut lead to demonstrate that. Because we want you to actually be able to see what the problem was, but also in the training it's quite important not to have a young child or somebody on the end of that lead who's not going to be able to hold that dog. So yeah.
And has he actually gone as far as biting or hurting anyone, or have they
Yeah,
just
he
not
has.
challenged him?
He has. Now, he's actually not gone as far as breaking skin, but he's gone as far as putting his mouth onto Nikki's arm. And basically what he's doing there is he's letting her know that he's the boss. It's a different form of aggression. It's not an attack as in I'm going to hurt you. It's a discipline. So the dog's actually disciplining her to make her understand that, well, I'm the alpha. When the food's there, I eat it at my discretion.
That's right.
And you keep well away. And basically he's disciplining her. He's doing what he thinks is right. And the reason he's doing that is because Nikki's let him know that he is actually the boss, not on purpose, but through her just general behaviours and the way she treats the dog.
And he's telling her that her behaviour is inappropriate.
Yeah. So he's training her into the animal world, and unfortunately we've got to turn that around and let him know in the same language, in the animal language, in the dog language, that she's actually the boss.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we've got here is Nikki's actually brought out the dog's bowl, and she's got a cracker on the top of it, and she's had that sitting on top of the food. She was happy enough that she didn't have a piece of plastic or something under it. She's eating that cracker, and what this actually shows him is that she is the alpha because she eats first. Okay, and what's been happening is in the past that she's bringing out the food to him, he's eating it, and if she's anywhere near him, which is unacceptable to an alpha, he's growling at her. So even putting the food down was quite nerve-wracking for her. So she's sitting there, she's taking her time in eating the food. He's staying and sit. I've asked him to sit, and he's pretty well behaved in most aspects, and he's waiting there. I actually do have that lead very well held because I don't want him to shoot forward and hurt Nikki at this point. So I've actually got quite a tight rein on him there with my left hand, and my right hand's also holding the lead. So I've got the lead in 2 points to really make sure that he's not going to sneak off on me.
And just tell everyone what other body language Nikki's displaying while she's eating.
Yeah, it's very important. While she's eating, she's completely ignoring him. No eye contact. It's pretty much as if he isn't there, So now she's put the food down. Now I'm asking him to sit, okay, or telling him to sit, and Nikki has asked him to wait, which she's just done verbally, and he's just sitting there until she said okay. And so the point that she gave the release, I then also let the dog move forward if he wanted to, and he starts eating. Now what he's eating is actually just rice, okay, and the reason we're using rice is it's a very bland food, and dogs are a lot less likely to be aggressive around rice than, say, meat. A good piece of a red steak, they're going to be pretty full on about it. Or a bone, because it's storable energy. So we start off with a food that's quite simple. So what we've done here, he's eaten about half of it, and then I'm getting him to sit again. He's not too keen to move away from the bowl, okay, but he has moved away. And what Nikki's doing now is removing that bowl. Okay, and you can see she's quite nervous about the whole thing. She is very nervous because the dog has, put his mouth on her. He has bit her, not seriously. There's no skin broken. And what she's done now, she's gone away and got some nicer food to put on it. Basically, I think it's a few of his biscuits or something went in there. And what she's shown to him is you can start eating this rice, which is pretty bland, and like I said, we've used that for safety reasons. He's less likely to be aggressive about it. We've removed him from it. She's gone away, and now she's put some nice food in there, and she's going to bring it back. So for behaving, there's a reward. and he hasn't got what he wanted straight away. He's seen her eat. She's the alpha. And now he started eating. We've stopped that eating, and now we're bringing out some nicer food. And he's going, okay, during eating, if I behave, I actually get a bonus.
Right.
Okay. Rice is okay. Fine, he'll eat it. But, the bickies taste better, They've
Yeah.
got a bit more meat flavour and so there's a definite reward for participating in the game.
And Brian's made an important comment too, that dogs will become more aggressive with meat than they will be with perhaps a dry food type diet. And it's not uncommon for dogs to not be food bowl aggressive, but become aggressive when they're given a bone or something
Yeah.
like that. And you can see that as the food gets nicer and given less frequently, the dog's
Yeah.
aggression will escalate.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the restaurant and you were sitting down to some of your least favourite food, maybe it was, for me, it'd be a bowl of Brussels sprouts, and somebody came and took that away from me before I'd finished eating it to bring out the second course, I wouldn't really care. But if, I was sitting down to my main, a nice big steak straight off, and they came up and the waiter took it away halfway through, I'd probably be a bit aggressive myself too. So, you really don't want to throw the dog into that position where it's,
Right.
you're setting it up to fail. We're always trying to set the dog up to succeed.
Great.
Okay, so this is a few days later, and what we're doing is we're actually sitting down together. And incidentally, when I go into places to do training like this with people, I've shown no affection or anything, or even acknowledged this dog at all. But it's important that the whole family can actually sit down and participate in this behaviour of the gesture eating, which is sitting down and eating the food out of the food bowl before the dog gets it. And that's a really fun thing to do with kids. The kids really enjoy it. I think it's sort of fun eating out of the food bowl. They go to school and tell their teacher that they eat out of a dog bowl at home.
But once again, you display no acknowledgement
No
whatsoever to the
acknowledgement
dog
of the
while
dog.
while you're eating in front of him.
Yeah, and here we go now. Here comes the rice. As you can see, he's sort of keen to hop up and get into it. I've asked him to sit again, and now Nicky's just waiting until he, for him to basically settle down, and then she gives him the release. He goes over. He starts eating. Same thing, rice. Okay, so this is all he's getting. It's just rice. As opposed to his normal yummy food. And rice is a good food for dog, and it's quite a nice bland food to use. And most dogs will eat rice without any problems. You might have to, if your dog's not into it, you might find another bland sort of food that they sort of will eat. And here he is. He's not very keen to come away from it. So I just pull him back, get him to sit. Okay, and now we're going to see Nicky remove the food. And you can see Nicky's actually still quite nervous around her dog.
Is that hard for her to do without looking at him?
It is real hard when she comes in to remove that food.
His body language is different though. His tail's wagging and
Yeah.
he's not perhaps as aggressive as he was in the first shot that we saw.
No, and he's sort of realised, look, yesterday or a couple of days ago when I did this, better food come out. So that's what he's waiting for,
Right.
So we're actually having a bit of an agreement with him, basically, that you play the game and you reap the benefits, And here we go, and it's important to make that dog wait, and I'm getting him to sit again before he goes onto the food. And I've made him sit there again because he's tried to hop up before Nicky said okay. And the game's played to our rules, not to his rules.
And I think this is something that you can't really go through if you live on your own with your dog. You
No.
need someone on the other end of that lead for safety.
You do, you really do.
It would depend on the dog and the level of aggression, but I think the safety element is very important to emphasise here.
I mean, even a small dog, you still don't want to get a bite of a small dog. You never want to set your dog up to actually bite anyone. It's not a good thing. So, yeah. So we're into the good tucker, and basically it's a really good time for him. He's sort of getting some positive rewards at the moment. Life's changed a little bit, but it's not too dramatic. And Khan at this point was happy enough to go along with the game. Now, interestingly enough, what I've done now is just released him from there, moved away from him, but I actually stayed around him because in the past he'd growl at people even being around him, but because I was there from the beginning, playing the game with him, he didn't actually ever get into the growling at me because he was more interested in focusing on Nicky and getting that food, and it was quite good for him to have somebody around him. But then I was also showing him a bit of respect and moving away and letting him have his food in peace for participating in the game.
Right.
Okay, so we're back to some gesture eating here, and this is, I think, possibly about a week later. Nicky's been doing this routine over and over again. This dog, reasonably consistent with the time that it would take. It doesn't happen overnight. It does take quite some time to retrain a dog and with these sorts of problems. So I think it might have taken about 6 weeks in total to work through this whole problem. So it means getting up earlier in the morning for it to go through this. Normally she just put the food bowl outside, and incidentally we're feeding him in a different spot from what he normally got fed in. So we want to remove any of the old triggers away as much as possible. So normally the dog bowl sort of came outside, was popped on the ground, and he could have his breakfast while she got ready for work. So now she has to get up a little bit earlier.
And I notice you're also putting the bowl in the middle of the courtyard. You're not putting it in a corner.
No. So you're not letting the dog get into a position where he feels like he's trapped in any position. And as you can see, I'm not actually holding the dog at this point, and we've got to the point where we're happy enough that the dog will stay without me holding, because he's got into the routine. Okay, and yeah, it's worked really well. She's basically got the dog to sit, stay, and he's sitting there eating his rice. Well, sort of, because life's sort of been a bit of a dawdle for him. Being the alpha, he could eat at his own discretion, and this is something that when dogs do eat, they really should wolf the food down. That's really what they should be doing, because if they don't, somebody in the house in the pack's going to take it. Now, Nicky's feeling very nervous here, okay, and this actually is displayed to the dog. The dog's actually quite aware that she's nervous, and if you watch as she goes towards the bowl and I'm coaxing her along, he puts his head down, and although he's not growling,
She hesitated.
okay, and at this point, if your dog's growling, you may be better to leave it alone, okay, and that's what's happened here. He started to growl, and we've had to back off. She's asked him to sit again, and we're talking to the dog in a fashion that, as much as possible, he understands that we mean business. Now, for Nicky, this is really hard, and for the dog, he can actually tell with Nicky that he's not really 100% sure whether she really means it. So this is a bit of a battle of the wills. Now, this is something you wouldn't press too far. You don't want to get bitten. But I wasn't overly convinced that Khan really meant business at this point. Typical of what can happen. So, we've actually gone a step backwards there. Because
He is displaying openly aggressive body language, though, and whether or not he's prepared to escalate that threat from a safety perspective, we're not prepared to find out.
Exactly. So we've had to go a step back, and so what Nicky has to do at this point is go right back to what we're doing in the beginning, and he goes back on the lead, and we go through the whole thing again. So basically, sometimes if you do have a failure, it's one step back to where you started and reinforce that, and then try and move forward. So, it's not everything goes smoothly, and there are setbacks, and setbacks are to be expected. In fact, I think it's pretty rare that you don't have them.
That's right. And I think it's also important to acknowledge the level of anxiety that the bite that Nicky has had has created, because when your dog bites you, it's something that none of us ever want to think that our dogs would do or are capable of doing. But that's a little bit of a naive attitude to carry. But when they do bite, they destroy all the trust and confidence that you have in them. So Nikki's half pie expecting him to go again, and that is creating her hesitation, which gives the dog a direct signal through her body language that he's winning that battle.
Yeah.
And so every time she hesitates, that's reinforced. So it is important for her to go back to where she feels confident and display that confidence to the dog.
Yeah, that is very important, very true. So the next session we've got with Khan after our wee step back is actually to take a step back. So we've taken a step back, basically, to the sorts of things we were doing at the beginning. Nikki's sitting there, she's doing the gesture eating again. I think this time she actually had some nicer food than the stale biscuit she had on the first day. So, it's reasonably important you actually have some nice food for yourself, because if you're sitting there eating something you're not really enjoying, the dogs actually do pick up on it. If you're sitting there having something nice and you're happy and basically having a good time and ignoring that dog at the same time and just relaxing, then the dog really picks up on, geez, that looks good. I've just got to wait here because I really aren't the important person involved here, or the important animal involved here. As dogs really don't see themselves as humans, they often see ourselves as other members of their pack.
And she's looking quite confident again because he's on lead.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
And just on that, in my participation here, like I said, I ignored Carden right from the beginning when I turned up. It's quite important if you've got a dog that is reasonably full on, maybe that you do get an outsider who's quite confident to come in to do the lead thing, get them to ignore that dog through the whole process pretty much. When they come into the house, they greet you but not the dog. Or if you're using your partner or somebody, that they participate fully in the training and understand it. Okay, so what happened here when she got him to sit, stay, and then move? I actually didn't hold any pressure on the lead. Okay, I don't know if you could see that, but I let the dog move by himself. This basically gave Nikki confidence that he was in the lead, but let the dog make his own decisions. Now, you can see there's a bit of a standoff here, and that he's sat down actually reasonably close to the bowl, and she's still hesitant. But I'm not holding any pressure on the lead still at that point. And he was actually quite happy to let it go more than she was.
Right.
Because she was a little bit anxious about the day before.
He came away from that food fairly easily, though, by the look of it.
He did.
When you asked him to.
He did. And, it's really Nikki who's feeling the stress. Now, the other thing is that she put the food down near her feet and got him to come over to her,
Right.
rather than bringing the food to him. That's quite important, that the dog knows that, you're the boss, they have to come to you for anything, rather than you coming to them. So you can bring their food out, get them to sit, put the food down at your feet and call them over to it.
And was he still persisting and growling at you while you were standing around to meet him then?
No.
So that's
that had gone.
diminished already.
Yeah, so basically, he came around initially very quickly to the game, but our setback came when she tried to remove the food, and more through her cues, and that's to be expected, because she had a bad experience with him biting her.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for her to get past that. And just speaking to her just the other day, they've really moved on. He's fine, but she said it really did take her probably another 3 to 4 weeks to get over the fact, even once she could remove the food halfway through his eating and then give it straight back to him, that he was safe with it before she really felt confident with it. Now she feels like she doesn't really have to worry, and in the next segment we can start to see the dog's improvements.
That's good.
Okay, we're back to the gesture eating. Nikki's eating her cracker out of the top of the bowl here.
Did she start every day with gesture eating every time she fed the dog?
Yeah, it was. Well, I felt it was very important for this dog that we really hammered home the message.
Yeah, I agree.
And the whole thing was when she met him in the morning. He's an outside dog, so basically should go down, release him from where he's held, which is in a yard down below, and then just basically give him free rein around her, but completely ignore him until he settled down before he even got his breakfast brought out. Now he's being asked to wait and sit down for his food, which he's doing really well. So we've got into a bit of a routine, and he's been released, and and he's getting a lot hungrier and starting to eat his food a little bit better. We actually reduced his food down a little bit as well, just to help. Obviously, you can do this over short periods of time, or you can break down your dog's amount of food into 3 or 4 meals if you need to intensify the training, but also to just to get the dog a bit more enthusiastic about having their food. If you've got a dog which wants to hoard its food, you can always put the food out, small amounts of food out for them. If it gobbles that down, then you give it some more. If it wants to sit there and sort of hoard its food and be growly around it, then don't bring the rest of the food out for it.
It's just interesting to note too that he just moved his hindquarters away, so he's not in a direct confrontational line to her. That is a very subtle but significant change in that dog's body language, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing is he's had to come over to her, and she's actually stayed there, just completely ignoring him, but stayed there. And in the past, her being this close to him would have resulted in him growling.
Right.
You know, it would have been unacceptable for anybody to be in his space. So, you know, basically now he can actually eat his food with somebody present and not have to worry too much about, you know, him growling at them. So in that session, all we'd done was he'd had his food out. She just stayed in the close proximity, and we didn't get her to remove the food at that point. But what we wanted to do was to have him eat his food nice and close to her, and for Nikki to be reassured, being that close, that she wasn't going to be growled at. And it was as much to build her confidence as it was to put a message across to the dog.
And that's important for us as trainers to recognise that there's a human element involved in most problems, whether it's a conscious one or not.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, she's had a fright and she needs to have that confidence rebuilt in order to succeed with the training. So, yeah, it looks like you're doing a good job.
Yeah, he's a big, powerful dog, and it's understandable that you'd be nervous around him, but yeah. Okay, now we see Nikki coming out with Khan again, and I've moved right out of the whole frame now, and Nikki seemed to have a bit of a change in attitude and was feeling a lot more confident in herself through this whole training session. Now he started eating the food, and I think by memory he went a little bit sooner than he'd been invited to. She'd got him to sit, come around to the side of him, like she would normally with the lead. And actually at this point I would have almost been happy for the session to have stopped there, because he really did have his head down. There was no growling, but Nikki was feeling very confident and displayed that to the dog in removing her food. So, you know, it would have been quite acceptable to have stopped it there and gone back a step again. But, you know, her level of confidence was much higher. And she's now placing the food back down. So since then, Nikki said she's had great results. She's feeling a lot more confident, and she actually does this as quite a regular routine with the dog, and the dog's quite used to it. The food comes out, he starts eating it, and she removes and then gives it straight back. So there's a definite reward there for the dog, and this is not happening every time she feeds him, but you know, she's made a conscious effort to really let him know who's the boss. And just through her general everyday life, when she's taking him for a walk, if she has any problems with him whatsoever with behaviour, she simply returns him home with no fuss, and his walk's terminated. And through all these different things, she's breaking down that whole barrier of him thinking that he's the boss, and his whole behaviour has changed. So
that's great.
Really positive.
It's a very good outcome.
Yeah, it is. It is a very good outcome, and it's gone that way because the owner's been willing to participate fully in what they're doing and had the full support of her family to do that.
Good.
So, yeah. Okay, and now we're going to have a look at it's a dog I saw just a couple of days ago, and it's an aggression problem within the family, within the family pack, and the dog's mainly showing aggression towards the children within that family. And the dog is a Ridgeback Cross. I think it's about 18 months old, and there's also an older dog in the family as well, so they have quite different roles and have quite different reactions to the children. The older one's quite matriarchal,
Right.
and has taken the role of basically overseeing the family, but there's no real issues there with dominance, where the new dog is making actually a play for the dominance over the other dog as well, and definitely wants to be the alpha in this family.
Sure.
So it's really getting cued by all these messages the family's giving it
Yep.
that it is the alpha, and quite keen to take that position. So quite a naturally dominant dog.
Yep.
Which is a little bit unusual. Most dogs aren't naturally dominant. This dog is.
Okay. And dominance and aggression towards children is something that is very common in a family or pack unit, especially the younger the children, the more common it is. It's something that we probably both see quite commonly out there. It can be extremely frightening towards the parents watching the dog react like that to the children, and a lot of people seriously consider how safe their children are around their dog when this type of behaviour is displayed. And once again, the safety of the children is paramount and has to really be the first consideration. But speaking to trainers and behaviourists and working on modifying the dog's training is definitely the first step in solving that problem and creating a much better unit within the household. So should we have a look at that?
Yeah, let's go and have a look at what happened when I went around to see the family. And I'm here with Simone and Robbie, and we're here to talk about your dog. Your dog's name was?
Jam.
Jam. And Jam's got a little bit of a problem with mouthing Riley and jumping up, is that right?
She just plays a little bit too aggressively.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a lot of mouthing and like she looks at paws around her head and tries to push us around. Yeah, that's body pushing as well.
And that's a little bit scary, Riley? You don't like this little behaviour? You do like playing with your dog? Right, okay. And what about with visitors, with other children and adults? How's your dog with this?
Well, she's a little bit excited with other adults, but she doesn't play as badly as she does when we've got children around. When they're running around, she's running around and doing this mouthing and yeah, just a bit scared it's going to go to the next step and actually raise this gun.
And your older dog, you've got an older dog, what was her name?
Zant.
Zant, and Zant's, you got no problems with Zant?
She's fine, she's great.
Right, and how do the two dogs interact together?
Well, I think they've pretty much sorted it out. The older dog's the top one, so she's quite happy with her position, but yeah.
Okay, so we're going to see what we can do with the dog's behaviour and try and get it to behave a little bit better around the children and to get rid of the mouthing problems and also the jumping up problems. So now we've sort of seen me sitting down chatting with the family, I'd actually like you to have a look at the shot of the young girl playing and the way the dog interacts with her and just see what you thought. The dog really did get in there when she made any rapid movements, and the child is really quite confident. She's used to the dog almost doing this to her and doesn't like it a bit, but not really aware of how this could escalate into something worse.
Yeah.
So
The dog's definitely playing in her mind, but definitely showing signals of perhaps escalating that behaviour in the future.
Yeah, the dogs, through play, the dog's actually testing the grounds for where it stands within the pack and is getting this information, compiling it and going, I'm building myself a good dossier to go to the top. And that's what that dog's doing around the whole family. So, it's really something that while the dog's young, really needs to be stamped on because potentially this dog, could escalate into a dog that could bite somebody or actually get to the point where it starts disciplining the family. I think that's not too far away.
So what were your recommendations in terms of how to start going about fixing this problem?
Yeah, so we're looking at getting the message across to the dog that it's not the alpha. So we really come down to some basic things. the 5-minute rule, as I like to call it, and when the family comes into a room around the dog, that they ignore the dog completely, and that's everybody in the whole family. And sometimes with children, you really need to be with the child to make sure that happens. And you know, so you come into a room, have things set up for the child to do, that's going to take the child's attention. So it might be coming into the room first thing in the morning, already have some breakfast set up or something for the child. Right. You can sit down and you can all participate in what you're doing there, and the dog just gets ignored completely. So the dog goes, oh, okay, well, you know, they're all doing this. If the dog's getting too boisterous and actually wanting to push up at the table from that first thing in the morning, if you've got some way of having a barrier where the dog can still see through, you can put up some sort of a barrier where you can keep the dog out of the way while you guys sit down and force the dog to have non-participation. Sure. In the case of a dog that's just boisterous. And, you know, you're sitting down there, you're eating your breakfast and getting all the family chores done in the morning while you've got that child there. And then once your child's headed off to school or, you know, into another room to play, that's when you can get to the point where you can bring out the food bowl or do that while the children's still there, do the gesture eating after breakfast. The dog goes, oh, okay, they've eaten, now they're eating out of my bowl and I'm getting the leftovers. So there's quite a strong message there. And through that whole process, the dog's been pretty much ignored the whole way, or has been completely ignored the whole way. And you know, like I said, the important thing is when you're doing this with children, you have to not only think of what am I doing with the dog, but how do I keep the children occupied that they don't take any notice of the dog. Right. So you've got to have lots of fun things around for the children. Otherwise, they just can't help but look at the dog or do something. So you've got to distract the child while the dog gets the message across. And then there's little subtleties like walking through doors, obviously, not letting that dog walk through doors before you. A dog like this, when you go to greet somebody at the door, this dog does bowl up to the door and want to make the greeting, you know, right. and can be actually relatively aggressive and vocally aggressive. Not physically aggressive to people coming in, but certainly vocally aggressive. That dog then needs to be removed from that door before it's open, taken away on the lead and put somewhere else until it gets the idea that it doesn't actually have any business going up to the door to answer it. That's your job.
That's your job, yeah.
And so basically to start on the whole regime of letting this dog know who is boss and treating the family, greeting the family first and waiting till this dog really settles down. And that's what we hope to do, is to go back and work with this family and their dog, really establish to this dog, you know, in an overpowering way almost, because this is quite an overpowering dog. The message needs to be brought home quite strong to it that it really isn't that important by all visitors, by all people who come into this house. And if people aren't going to participate, you've got friends or family who don't want to go along with this or whatever who may visit, then you put the dog away while they're there.
Absolutely.
You know? And you really have to get the message home to this dog that it's just not that important. Now with the other dog that's involved in the family, you've got to let those two dogs sort it out. So you've got to let them pretty much have neutral territory and as far as you're concerned, because the younger dog is actually making a play to be dominant over the other dog. And when you feed the both of them, you can actually just pop their food down. So you can do the gesture feeding with the both of them, but pop their food down in a neutral fashion where you basically let them sort it out. And, you know, they may decide, you may see one of them actually eat before the other, and this sometimes happens. But whatever they want to do, you just got to sit back and let them sort their pack thing out. And, right. What you've got to do is sort where you are out in the pack. So really the message is, I'm the boss. Where you guys are as far as each other goes, that's for you to sort out. You guys sort that out.
Right. And it looks like for this family that consistency is going to play a key part in actually getting the message across to this dog, because if anyone in the family is inconsistent with their demonstration of authority, then the dog is actually going to feel that it's winning a battle over everybody, not just that one person. Yeah,
and this is where you've got to sort of control the environment with the children around it. A dog like this certainly shouldn't be left with children unsupervised, or really left with the children to play with them in this situation, even supervised, because as you can see, potentially an accident could happen. And play escalates very, very fast from genuine play into dominant play into aggressive play. And the dog doesn't think it's doing anything wrong other than what comes naturally to it. So as far as any sort of play with the child at the moment, it really has to be eliminated, really. There can be no play of any kind with children and this dog at the moment until the dog really understands where it's at.
Yeah, well, good luck with the family, and
Yeah.
we'll look forward to seeing perhaps some results in the future.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.